All right. I think we are live. Let's see here. Wait for the folks to be let in. Then we'll get started. Give it like 30 seconds, then we'll go.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Should we get started, Eric?
Sounds good to me.
Cool. Well, thank you everybody for joining. I'm here to interview Erich, who runs an MSP. We're going to learn all about him and his journey, any learnings he had, and then you guys will have the opportunity to ask a bunch of questions. So thanks for joining, first of all. Really appreciate it. Erich, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everybody on the East Coast, and good morning everywhere else. So I've been operating leveldesk, a managed service provider based in the greater metropolitan New York area with a presence in Southern California since 2013 when I started as Beckman Technology Projects. My family has a history of putting our names on businesses as a way to establish our reputation and really show that we back up our work with our name. And then in 2018, I acquired a company called LevelDesk that was also based here on the East Coast as a way to acquire some talent and a little bit of book of business and align myself with a business partner who shared my business ethic and ideals. And that's kind of the history of LevelDesk. I myself been in the tech industry in one form or another since 1998, where I started off a little computer shop in Rhode Island, just as a field technician. Then I moved to New Haven, Connecticut to work for a company called DSL.net, which was then acquired by Megapath and is now owned by a company called Fusion Connect, selling SDSL, symmetric DSL services nationwide, and I designed a bunch of products for them. After the tech bubble burst, I kind of found my way into going and finally acquiring my degree, and then worked for a couple of software development companies after I graduated, and decided to break out on my own. Found that I really had a passion for working on computers and building networks and making all the blinking, beeping boxes blink and beep. So that's my history.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that brings me to present.
Yeah, so tell us about the present. So you've got an MSP you're running, and how's that going, and what's the situation there?
Well, for the past couple of years, since the pandemic began, the business has been what I would refer to as mostly steady state. Granted, in 2021, there has been a bunch of growth, especially in the form of existing business that I think my clientele was kicking down the road in 2020. So, I think people were both anxious to get back to work in 2021, or at the very least, start putting some budgets in place to, both maintain and expand their business. And we've been able to rise to meet those challenges and service our existing clients. We haven't been putting a lot of effort into growing our business through anything but referrals and other organic processes. But that's kind of par for the course for us and the way that I that big, go get them type of salesy MSPs. We're more referral based. That's how the past couple of years have gone. Prior to that, a lot of handshakes and meeting people and networking and building relationships.
Got it.
So that
Cool.
really, and that actually really positioned us well to going into the pandemic, because we kind of had a reputation for being trusted advisors.
Yeah, so I heard two things in there that I want to ask you about. One is it seems like you had to shift some things around in the pandemic in order to accommodate your clients and a lot of things there. So I'd love to hear about that. The second thing is you mentioned growing via referrals. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that too. So maybe you want to start with the pandemic aspect.
Yeah. So January, February 2021, actually January, I had the flu. I think that was kind of a little warning from the universe that something bigger was coming. Uh, then going into February, business kind of dropped off. First, it dropped off drastically, as I guess my clientele was trying to figure out how this was going to affect them. And then toward the end of February, beginning of March, it shot up as everybody said, oh my God, we are going to have to work remote for God knows how long. Now, my business personally, I've built it to be decentralized, remote, however you want to put it. All of my workers are work from home, have been since I started the business. Um, the ones that I consider field technicians are strategically placed amongst the geographic distribution of my book of business so that they can be dispatched. But generally, it's a voice over IP based system. We're also a VoIP company, facilities based VoIP company. So deploying that was no problem. Turning around and deploying a similar type of paradigm for our clientele was relatively painless. If there was any pain, it was really just kind of that shift of how to do that kind of business that was faced by our clients. And we were able to not only implement that for them, but also coach them on how that's going to be different. What do you do when there's no water cooler to commiserate around, or swap weekend stories about? How do you do that over tools like Teams and Slack? And replicating that kind of atmosphere is crucial to maintaining, employee productivity, yes, but also morale in an environment where suddenly we are isolated from each other in a way that's been unprecedented in our generation.
So when you were rolling out training for your clients on how to use Zoom and how to use Slack, so things like that, like you said, I mean, I know you've in the past, I don't know if you currently do, you have clients on both coasts, right? So
Yes.
like, are you doing that over Zoom? Do you have documentation you're sharing with them? Are you going on site? Like, how are you able to do the training and make that easy for your team and for them?
It's interesting because what I've found is that holding hands, virtually, in person, over the phone, Zoom, Teams, whatever, however you can get face to face with the people, in my experience, is the most well received. But I do have a couple of clients that are very much like, I want a thing that is written down. And if you write the thing down for me, then I'm not going to look at it. I'm still going to call you and want to talk to you, but I want the thing written down. And that's fine. We'll do that on a case by case basis because so many of our solutions are tailored to individual businesses. A restaurant that suddenly needs to do all of their business over the phone and through referral websites, Grubhub, Seamless, Uber Eats, things like that, is going to have a much different need of a documentation need than a law firm that suddenly needs to have remote desktop implemented on a server that was designed to just be a lightweight file server. So that creates a bit. It did create a bit of a burden in the customers and the clients that were very much rooted in their desire for physical documentation. That is to say, written documentation. But as I kind of mentioned before, we end up dealing with them face to face anyway, or at least tete a tete, over Zoom or Teams or whatever. It's certainly not face to face, but um, that ends up being the most engaging and well received engagement. Is is that personal contact. And a lot of that may be just a desire to have that kind of contact and atmosphere where, as I said before, we're very isolated, where people would, oh yeah, the paper, yep, and I demanded this paper and I wanted this paper and the paper's great. Let's still have a meeting about it.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like you have clients that are different verticals. You mentioned lawyers, you mentioned restaurants. So I imagine lots of pros and cons with that because some people specialize in certain verticals, some people are broad. I imagine in a pandemic, it was probably advantageous to have people in different, or at least you probably slept better at night having people in different verticals. Like, at least that's what I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean there are certainly benefits from a diversification perspective, having that diversity built right into the client portfolio. That was never really the intent so much as it was. I get bored very easily. I don't know how many people in technology have ADD. I do. So what I like to do is do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and the way I've positioned my company reflects that, in that we try to be the up and running support for a wide variety of industries. And if they need specialized knowledge, we can help connect them with that knowledge, but it usually exists outside of our organization. And I think that works well for two reasons. One, it keeps costs down for us and therefore our customers, in that we don't have to have someone who is like uber specialized in Cisco IOS, in some little niche product that the construction industry uses. And two, the client, my client portfolio doesn't have to therefore face supporting that kind of infrastructure ongoing when they're not going to need it. If we're doing our jobs properly, I believe they're going to need us the least amount of time possible. And I believe that's the MSP model, is I try to fix it and set it so you never call me. And there, we have that kind of alignment of imperatives, wherein I don't want it to break because then it helps my margin, and you don't want it to break because when it breaks, it puts you out of business. So if they have to support an infrastructure or an employee base internally that is hyper specialized in their vertical, they're probably going to be paying a premium for that. So we try to fit into that underserviced category of, like, most of our clients need us sometimes.
Got it. So, like in the example you said, construction. So they might need some special thing for managing their clients, and that software, maybe it requires a special set of knowledge. So you might subcontract, I'm guessing, to someone who is an expert in that thing, and you don't have to have it therefore on staff.
If they want to do subcontracting, I'm happy to do that. I'd rather just do a referral. I think that, how do I put this? In my ethic, it's always been that money is made through the assumption of risk. When you're paying me as a managed service provider, I'm assuming the risk of your IT department, albeit outsourced. Now, in a similar fashion, if I'm going to, collect some sort of referral or amount, or, some type of subcontracting arrangement where the is through me, then there's got to be some sort of value add there. And if I think that ultimately you're just going to end up dealing directly with this, that to me is just a referral. There are occasions when we don't do that, when we do subcontract. Cabling is a good example of that. I don't do cabling. I have no desire to do cabling. I certainly don't want to be on the hook ultimately for the cabling, but I'm happy to subcontract that out because cabling vendors have, availability that is erratic. They have, their quotes can vary wildly from job to job. So, I usually always Ps to have a couple of wiring, cabling, low voltage contractors in their back pocket, maybe even an electrician or two. But other than that, for that specialized mindset that goes along with, XYZ product for construction, or time slips is the big one for lawyers. If Because they need to pay somebody a lot of money to implement, train, and then they're gone. So I'd rather not have those people on staff. I'd rather just refer it out. Let me know when you're done with them. If they have any questions for us, make sure you loop us in those conversations, things like that. We'll work with them. But a subcontractor relationship, to me, it always seems like either I'm on the hook for somebody else's knowledge and how they do on the job and what they're going to charge, or I'm really not in a position to add any value there other than just sourcing the person for you.
Yeah, got it. That makes sense. So earlier you mentioned like growing through referrals. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
My favorite way to grow the business. First off, it has a built-in trust element. Trust to me is a huge component of this industry. If you're not cultivating trust, then how can you act as someone's cybersecurity advisor? How can you sell them even an antivirus product without them trusting you and your judgment? And along with that trust comes their desire to want to refer you to other businesses that are in their circle of friends, their community, their chamber of commerce, their networking group, whatever. And being able to then go and do a good job and cultivate that trust with the referral doesn't just reflect positively on myself and my business, but it also reflects positively on the person that gave that referral. So it's really a great way not just to grow your business, but also put yourself in a position and your business in a position where people aren't questioning your judgment and your recommendations from day one, which I think is just an unhealthy relationship to begin with. If a client or a prospect enters the conversation with some type of mistrust, then every dollar you make from them is going to cost you $1.20.
Totally. And there can be a little bit of a, yeah, just general
Not to mention
mistrust
the
in
headache.
IT. Yeah. I totally agree. So are there groups you've gone to? Like, how have you gotten referrals?
So I think it was back in 2014 or 15. Somebody in my industry, somebody in my industry that I was courting as a potential employee asked me if I had ever tried BNI before, Business Network International, and I hadn't. And so he said, "Oh, we're forming this chapter. You may want to come and check this out." That was really kind of it codified a lot, several aspects of my business ethic. Some things that I hadn't been able to put into words. The concept of givers gain, that's like their mantra. And the idea of like going out, introducing yourself to a bunch of people and showing them, demonstrating to them what your value is, not just in the work you can do for them, but also who you are connected to that you can connect them to. And it's all, I mentioned trust in the answer to the previous question. It's very trust based. If people feel like you're not trustworthy, like you are, just there to collect leads, you're just out to make a buck, whatever, you may not even be let into the group in the first place, and you certainly won't stay around. I did that for about 4 years. That was extremely beneficial, and it was most beneficial starting at about month 3, when I realized that the best way to get the referrals was to give referrals. Not in a transactional way, just in a, hey, look, I'm not some schmo that's just trying to fleece what I can. I want to help out. How could I help? How can I help you with your business? Oh, you're an interior designer. This guy, no, he's an architect. Maybe you should talk to them. I don't know, whatever. As soon as I started doing that and kind of loosened up and got into that kind of groove, I realized that's what those groups and that's what those interactions are all about. So all of my networking in BNI, outside of BNI, bi-coastally, started to become centered around that motif, that idea of like walk into every relationship saying, how can I help?
That totally makes sense. Cool. And so, um, separate topic, you've you've been in a lot of different your journey as an entrepreneur. You started in a lot of different places. You worked at a computer or an MSP. You did a lot of different things. When you finally decided to set off on your own, what was that experience like?
Well, it's it's a roller coaster. Um, you gotta have. I don't want to say you gotta have a strong stomach, because the ups and downs should affect you. You don't want them to not affect you, because that's what kind of helps with the instinct, and helps point you in the right direction, is listening to your gut. But there definitely are lots of ups and downs. You're gonna feel like, you gotta close a big deal one day and say, this is such a big, like, transaction for me. This is gonna, like, mean I can buy a bigger house and get a better car and send my kids to private school or whatever. But the day after that, it could be, oh my God, I'm in way over my head. It's that's really those are the peaks and valleys of entrepreneurship. And I've worked as an employee at a startup, and I've started this business and run it for several years. The benefit of being your own boss is, if I don't have anything scheduled for the rest of the day and I'm like, hey, I want to go hiking or sailing or whatever, I'd want to veg on the couch and watch Netflix, I can do that, you know. But I still got to be ready to answer the phone at odd hours of the night. So it all balances out. Um, it's very free form, and I can say it can be just enough rope to hang yourself with. And the peaks and valleys can be the highest highs and the lowest lows. But I don't know that I'd go back to working for someone else or working for another business. It's it's exhilarating, and it makes it when people talk about things that make you feel alive. This is definitely one of those things that makes me feel alive, both the highs and the lows.
That totally
I'm
resonates
not
with my
sure if I was
experience
too
too.
roundabout in the way I answered your
No, I
question
totally
there.
get it. They're exhilarating is a good descriptor, right? Like there's like an addictive nature to it. It's like, yes, this can be really horrible one day and really great another day, but either way, you're in control of your destiny and it's on you. And there's something empowering about that. That I don't know. I
I don't
felt the
think
same
there's
way when
something
we were
empowering
starting.
about it all. I think that's exactly what is empowering about it, about entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
Is it's you are literally bending the business to your will, right or wrong.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So how have one of the things I went through and I guess still go through is like, how do I prioritize my time? There's a million hats to wear, there's a million things to do. There are a million things that can feel like that would be productive if I did that, but you can't do them all, right? So how have you been able to use your time wisely?
You know, my wife actually came up with the best solution for this. my wife is a incredibly business savvy woman. She's much better at operating a business than I am. I will start by saying that. And the best piece of advice that she ever gave me, and I try to abide by this as much as I can, is rather than get stuck on the things that you don't want to do or you have trouble starting doing, or maybe you're not the best at, sub that out. Hire somebody to do that. I don't like managing my schedule, you know. Assistant, hire an assistant. There's plenty of part-time assistants out there. You can hire somebody on Fiverr that just checks in with you once a day, and you just tell them, here are all the emails that I got that are people asking for my time. Organize it for me. And then cut down to the things that you enjoy doing the most. And you should have two piles. One pile is the pile of the things that you enjoy doing the most and are good at. If you enjoy doing them and you're not good at them, you shouldn't be doing them. And then the other pile is things that you don't enjoy doing but are good at, or you don't enjoy doing but nobody else can do them. I got to set up a payroll company. Yeah, I've got to switch payroll companies. I've got to pick an insurance plan for my employees. I've got to decide whether to hire person A or person B. These are all things that maybe you don't enjoy doing. But you got to do them. And when it comes to those things, the expression I use is eat the frog. Do the uncomfortable thing first, and then reward yourself with those. Oh God, I love setting up routers. So I've got these pile of routers over here, and I'm running the business, so I really should be doing all this admin crap. But I'm the only one who can do the admin crap. Well, then do the admin crap, then go and do the pile of routers for the rest of the day. And then pat yourself on the back and say, I did good, But those are the two piles you should leave yourself with. Anything that you don't like doing that you can sub it out. Even if you're like, I don't know if I should pay somebody to do that. I can do that. Yeah, but if you don't like doing it, or you're not good at doing it, then you're either going to do it poorly, or you're never going to do it, in which case it never gets done. Which is going to be more costly than just paying somebody to do it.
Agreed. And your time doesn't scale.
No, ultimately you have to constantly remind yourself, when you're starting out, it's easy to do everything yourself. Even those things that you don't like doing will eventually get done by you. But with scale comes the difficult decision of knowing what you should be doing and what you should be having other people do. And the rider to that I would suggest is to always remember yourself, or always remind yourself that nobody is going to care about your business as much as you do, not your employees, and nor should you ever treat your employees like they should care as much about your business as you do. That's why things like job descriptions and SOPs are so important.
Yep. And sometimes you do, as you said, just have to eat the frog, which I have a couple times. Frog legs are actually pretty good. Taste like chicken.
Yes.
Anyway, not all things actually taste like chicken, even though people say that, but I think frog legs actually kind of do. Okay, so with that aside, so you guys are completely remote, right? You hire all over.
Mm-hmm.
How did that come
I never
about?
wanted to have the overhead of office space.
Yep, office space, exactly. How did you decide to be remote, and like how have you made that work?
Well, I looked at the tools that were available to me, and I reminded myself quite easily and naturally that I work in IT, and the whole goal of IT is to allow the flow of information without needing all these human interactions, person-to-person interactions, sitting at a desk in a cubicle doing things. it does. It requires a certain work ethic in the employees that I hire, but I feel that that dovetails nicely with the work ethic that I want my employees to have and the way that we actually execute the delivery of our services. So, you know, is there a place for MSP? Is there a place for MSPs that work out of an office and all see each other every day and so in person, even in a post-COVID era? Yeah, absolutely. I'm just saying that what was right for me is, I didn't want that. I didn't want the overhead of the office space, and that felt like, to me, that feels like a gun to my head every month. You got to close this much business every month because you got to pay rent. That's not doing anything for me except keep me up at night. And also, it allows me to cast a broader net too. I can say, I don't care where you are. I need you to pick up the phone and do tier one. Help the person reset their password on their email. Check to make sure this server backup is running. Um, you know, stuff like that. Change, set up a VPN on this concentrator over, and or connect these two sites together. 99% of what we do nowadays should be able to be done remotely. And if it's not able to be done remotely, maybe you should consider a different platform to do it on. Because I mean, even some of the most secure government systems have pathways to the internet now. So there's really kind of there's not that need to go and do the work on site unless the connection to the outside world is broken. So, you know, all of that together just keeps pointing to decentralized, remote, pay for my employees, compute. You're going to buy a computer and a telephone for them anyway. You might as well send it out to them, pay for a residential internet connection, maybe VPN, mesh VPN yourselves all together if you have a need for something like that. But even with products such as Syncro, IT Glue, Screen Connect, all these different tools that we use, who cares where we are? We should all be able to do this from remote corners of the earth with good internet connections. That's the only requirement. Reliable, stable bandwidth.
Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, we're fully remote, so all that resonates. Yeah, one of the things you mentioned, I'm curious about. You mentioned keeping, basically like having peace of mind at night. What keeps you up at night, kind of thing. I'm curious, like in the MSP space, there's often um, a trap. I don't know how to describe it best, where you're like kind of always on call. And I think you referenced that earlier. Like you might have to get a call in the middle of the night or something. Um, Hopefully you don't, but sometimes things go down. And so I'm curious if you've been able to like find any strategies for making it so that you're a little bit more in control and not having to be reactive outside of normal work hours.
I'm going to answer that question in a way that might seem a little cagey. First, I'm going to give you a blunt answer. Then I'm going to ask for a clarification on your question, and then I'm going to give the answer again. The answer to the question is yes, that's always a possibility. And planning will set you free. But the clarification that I would ask for is who is up at night worried about getting those phone calls or actually getting those phone calls and dealing with them? I mean, is it the business owner or is it the employee?
Oh, well, I think in the early stages, often there isn't a difference.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think if the answer is, well, I've got employees that are on call now, that's a totally, legitimate way of solving that.
But that
You know,
comes back around to planning. So here's how I'm going to answer that question now that we have that clarification. The entrepreneur, the business owner, the stops here stakeholder will always have that. That is hopefully why we get paid the premium, get paid the big bucks, as they say, because we have to expose ourselves to that risk. We always face that risk that we may be called upon at any moment to pick up the slack or to fix the mess or to actually solve the problem that nobody else can solve. But I mentioned planning in my initial answer. And what I mean by that in this context is if somebody's going to be on call, you should have planned for that. That should already be in their job description. You have to manage that expectation. By manage the expectation, I mean with your employees. Your employees should know at such and such a time I handled any calls that come in.
it's all good. Yeah, cool.
Sorry, that's my son opening up the shade behind me.
No problem. This is how work from home works.
Work from home, man. Plus,
yeah.
we just moved, so like everything is still like chaotic, and not everybody knows where's off limits at certain times of the day and whatnot.
It's
So
all
I
good.
apologize for that. Hey, at least it's not a cat. I don't know. Everybody's got cats coming on these meetings nowadays. I've got a 3-year-old.
Yeah, sounds good. I think I only have a couple more questions. Let's see. How, in the remote environment, have you faced any particular challenges, and if so, how have you overcome those?
In the remote environment, maintaining the camaraderie is huge. I'm constantly having to remind my employees, like, guys, talk out of channel, like talk to each other about whatever, sports, video games, what you did last weekend. I don't care, but you got to keep that up. I do not expect you guys to work 90, 95, 99% of the day. I expect you to keep a good momentum, but keep yourselves engaged in the work. I hire people because they're passionate about this work. I do not want to hear I'm burning out. I feel isolated. I feel like I can't do this anymore. I don't enjoy, I don't enjoy my passion anymore. That's, to me, that is unacceptable. So I'm always vigilant to make sure that my employees are engaging with each other, personally. Aside from that, maintaining connectivity, I think, is from a technical perspective, is the most important thing. If I have an employee offline, then it's worse than having a client offline, because a client offline is, that's work. That's what we get paid to do. Let's go do it. An employee offline means that none of my clients can get fixed by that employee. So, if somebody needs a backup internet connection, like all the equipment that I provide them is going to be, dual WAN capable with automatic failover. The VoIP system is always going to be ready at a moment's notice to fail over to a backup internet connection. From that perspective, having the redundancy in place, the incremental cost is minimal compared to the potential for work loss, even for a 15-minute internet outage. And God help you if that goes down in the middle of a call. Now we can't even get the same tech who was working on this, whatever the ticket was, back engaged in it until their connectivity is restored. So that is a caveat of remote work. But another way to look at it is it does distribute that risk across your entire workforce as well. So if one person goes offline because somebody backhoed through a fiber optic connection in their neighborhood, it doesn't take out my entire office, so to speak.
Right. Right. It
So
sounds like you're willing to spend a little more to make sure there's no, I don't know. I think some people maybe overemphasize operating expense at the expense of not being able to do their job sometimes. So it sounds like you're willing to invest to make sure that your employees are able to do what they need to do.
well, in more ways than one. You know, I would even go so far as to buying somebody a brand new office chair if they needed one. You know, like, this chair is so uncomfortable. Boom, Herman Miller's at your door the next day. I don't care. I want you to be comfortable. I mean, if we were in an office, I'd probably buy a bunch of those expensive chairs. So why wouldn't I send one to your house? And likewise with equipment, connectivity, things like that. You know, like headsets for phones is another like example that people don't always think about. Oh, that headset's not comfortable. You want the two here, or you want an over the ear instead of the, well, okay, sure, it's at your door the next day. The top dollar one, this is kind of the way we comport ourselves to our clients, right? Is like, buy the good thing, get the technology out of your way so you can do your work. And we should walk that talk. We should go, in my opinion, we should go and get a brand new computer for our employees every 3 years. Make sure that they've got all the tools that they need in order to do the business that you have handed them. It's proper support of the employees is the work environment, regardless of whether that's in the office or in their home. An employee that feels properly supported is a long-term employee. That's people want to enjoy their work and enjoy their work environment. I'd say that's the close second after subsistence. It's like, does this job pay my bills? Then it's, do I enjoy this job? Then it's, can I make a bunch of money at this job or whatever, so yeah, I think cultivating that environment, whether it's in person or remote, is not at the top of the list, but it is the close second to everything else.
Awesome. Totally agree. I think my last question is, in a remote environment, hiring is different. You're not going to be there to see what your employees are doing or even help them sometimes when they need help getting unblocked. So I'm wondering, how do you hire remotely? What do you look for when you're interviewing people? Are there any things that you do differently in remote hiring that you would maybe not do in person?
I don't think that there's anything that I would do remotely that I wouldn't do if I were hiring in person. But I think when most of my client portfolio people interacts with my employees remotely anyway. So I think that from that perspective, you know, my impression of somebody, a job prospect, as far as whether they have good body language or dress smart or something like that, is pretty low down on the list, because I've got a lot of places and a lot of work for people that, maybe are hermits, you know, like, as long as you could, like, as I was saying before, 99% of this job can be done remotely and should be done remotely. So I don't really care too much about that stuff. How you present yourself over the phone or maybe over a video call is important, but more importantly, I want to start with the curiosity and the passion. I mean, I can even keep an employee or two off any sort of communication technology entirely for a lot of different projects if I think that they are just complete, wallflowers or whatever. There's a lot of that type of work in IT. But what I do need to see in any job prospect is or employee prospect is the passion for the work. And the way I put it to them is I always say, look, I got up this morning and picked up a computer and looked at it. Then I got in the shower, got ready for my day, and sat down in front of a computer. And then I worked on that computer all day. And at the end of the day, I went home, I went and joined my family and got on another computer. And this weekend, I'm going to be taking apart computers and putting them back together again. And that's what I'm going to be doing because that is what I love doing. What do you love doing? And if it sounds similar and I feel that they're being genuine with me, then everything else kind of becomes secondary. Your skill level, well, I've always got a heaping pile of work for people with little to no experience to do, password resets and a bunch of grunt work. And I'll keep throwing, hardware at them and weird little quirks that I want to challenge them with that'll help develop them as employees and as workers and help them feed that passion. But what I can't do is I can't create that passion in somebody that doesn't have it. So I'd say that is the absolute top of my list is this something you're going to be passionate about?
Awesome. That's great. Well, Erich, we're a little over time, so I so appreciate your time. Thank you for all the answers and the insights. I know a lot of people will benefit from that. And have a good rest of your day. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. If you ever need anything else, please don't ever hesitate to call.
Thanks, Erich.
All right. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.